Let's be honest, you've probably wondered why some men barely try, yet women orbit around them like gravity itself is bending in their direction. And meanwhile, the men who pour their heart out, who chase, who prove, who demonstrate loyalty and effort from day one somehow get dismissed, overlooked, or placed in the emotional waiting room. If you've ever felt that sting, that quiet confusion where you look at yourself and ask, what does he have that I don't? Then listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a truth. It's a truth most men never get access to. Women don't get obsessed with men because of muscles, money, height, or looks. Those things can attract attention, yes, but obsession that has a different origin entirely. Obsession begins in a place far quieter, far less visible, and far more dangerous to a woman's emotional equilibrium. And here's the part that will either liberate you or unsettle you. Women become obsessed with the man whose presence feels like a mirror, not a mission. A man who does one thing so effortlessly that most men don't even realize they're missing it. He remains rooted. Rooted in his identity, rooted in his opinions, rooted in his emotional center, rooted in his standards, rooted in a reality that isn't shaped by her approval, her moods, her tests, her reactions, or her threats to leave. A man like this is not rude, not cold, not uncaring, but he is unmoved. You can access him, but you cannot sway him. You can connect with him, but you cannot control him. And whether she admits it or not, this sends a shock through a woman's emotional system, because deep in her psychology, a woman is drawn toward the man she cannot easily categorize. The man whose emotional world does not rearrange itself just because she walked into the room. The man who listens, but not to impress. The man who speaks, but not to seek validation. The man who shows interest, but never desperation. He does not perform. He does not chase. He does not try to win her like a prize because he understands she is not a prize. She is a person, and so is he. Women get obsessed with men who live in a centered, calm, deeply grounded state of self. That grounding becomes addictive, almost intoxicating, because most women live in emotional motion. Thought shifting, feeling shifting, hormones shifting, social pressures shifting, and when she encounters someone who does not shift with her, someone who remains steady, someone who holds his own internal gravity, something ancient inside her wakes up. Call it instinct, call it psychology, call it feminine polarity, but whatever name you choose, the effect is the same. The grounded man becomes the emotional anchor she didn't even know she was searching for. And what's wild is that this one thing, being rooted, has nothing to do with being dominant or aggressive. It has nothing to do with playing games, withholding affection, acting mysterious, or using tactics. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. A man who is rooted is a man who chooses himself before he chooses approval. A man who can be loving without losing himself. A man who can give without collapsing. And the moment a woman realizes she can't unbalance him, that's the moment her obsession begins. Most men think women get obsessed with the guy who gives them everything: attention, affection, reassurance, constant texting, constant availability. But in reality, women become obsessed with the man who gives something far more rare: emotional certainty. And here's the twist: certainty doesn't come from words. It doesn't come from promises. It doesn't even come from effort. It comes from a man's ability to remain unchanged by the temporary storms around him. When a woman talks to a man who is emotionally certain, she feels something unusual, something unsettling in the best possible way. She feels that this man is not operating from insecurity. He's not trying to prove his worth. He's not waiting for a sign that he's good enough. He's not holding his breath for her validation. Instead, he shows up as someone who already knows who he is. Not arrogantly, not loudly, not with bravado, but quietly, naturally, effortlessly. Do you know how rare that is? Most men approach women with a subtle tension in their energy. Do you like me? Am I doing this right? Do I seem attractive? Did that message sound weird? Women feel all of that. They don't always consciously register it, but their emotional radar is sharper than you think. And uncertainty repels them, not because they're cruel, not because they're demanding, but because uncertainty means instability. Instability means emotional risk. Emotional risk means chaos. But when a woman meets a man who is emotionally grounded, emotionally safe, emotionally solid, her entire internal system responds. She slows down. She becomes curious. She becomes alert. She starts paying attention because this type of man is not common. This type of man feels like home even before she understands why. And here's the deeper truth. Women become obsessed with the man who does not collapse into their emotions. Most men melt the second a woman shows disappointment, frustration, silence, or a shift in tone. They panic. They rush to fix. They rush to please. They rush to regain harmony. But the man a woman obsesses over doesn't treat her emotions like threats. He treats them like information. He listens without absorbing them. He cares without crumbling. He stays present without losing himself. And that presence becomes something she returns to mentally over and over again. Because when a woman feels emotionally safe with a man, she doesn't just like him, she bonds with him. And when she feels emotionally challenged in a healthy way by a man who refuses to abandon himself, she doesn't just bond with him, she becomes hooked. You need to understand something powerful here. Obsession is triggered when a woman feels a mix of security and mystery. Not mystery as in games or manipulation. Mystery as in how, does he remain so calm? Why doesn't he overreact? Why doesn't he need my approval? Why does he feel so different from other men? Those questions echo inside her mind. They replay, they circle back, they linger when she's alone. They return in moments of silence. And that internal echo is what turns curiosity into attraction and attraction into obsession. A man who is emotionally certain, emotionally rooted, doesn't have to chase a woman, she chases him. Not because he's withholding something, but because he possesses something very few men ever develop, a stable emotional signature that she can feel even without words. Women don't become obsessed with men who try to be impressive. They become obsessed with men who are consistent with themselves, not with the situation, not with the woman, not with the outcome. And this is where most men unknowingly sabotage everything. They switch versions of themselves depending on who they're talking to. They adjust their personality, their values, their tone, even their interests, hoping to be more likable. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment a woman senses a man bending his identity, she loses the instinct to admire him because admiration is the gateway to obsession. A woman cannot become obsessed with a man she does not admire. And she cannot admire a man who betrays himself just to be chosen. The man who becomes unforgettable is the man who does something incredibly rare. He stays the same everywhere he goes. The way he talks to his friends, the way he talks to strangers, the way he talks to her, it all comes from one central aligned version of himself. No performance, no mental gymnastic routines, no emotional masks. This doesn't mean he's stubborn or inflexible. It means he doesn't abandon himself for connection. He doesn't shrink to avoid conflict. He doesn't inflate himself to appear superior. He lives in a kind of inner harmony that women can feel instantly, even if they can't explain it. And here's the psychological twist. When a woman meets this kind of man, she doesn't just feel attracted, she feels challenged, not in a stressful way, challenged in a way that makes her want to rise to meet him. His integrity sets the standard for the connection. His consistency becomes a stabilizing force. His energy becomes something she calibrates herself around. And even if she tries to resist it, her mind keeps coming back to him because he represents something she rarely encounters. A man who is whole. Wholeness is magnetic. Wholeness feels safe. Wholeness feels exciting. And wholeness is terrifying because she can't manipulate it. She can't predict it. She can't distort it. A whole man stands in front of a woman like a clear mirror. He reflects her patterns. He reflects her behaviors. He reflects her emotional turbulence, not with judgment, not with anger, not with ego, but with clarity. And clarity is powerful. Most people don't know who they are. When a woman meets a man who does, she gets pulled into his world like a current. He doesn't do anything extreme. He doesn't use tactics. He doesn't strategize. He simply lives his truth without apology. And that truth creates a gravitational field. Women become obsessed with the man whose presence makes them self-reflect, the man whose energy makes them step into awareness, the man whose steadiness forces them to look at their own instability. And even if she tries to distract herself, even if she talks to other men, even if life gets busy, her mind drifts back to him because of how she felt in his presence. Not excited, not entertained, not validated. Women don't get obsessed with men who try to control the pace of the connection. They get obsessed with men who control the pace of themselves. And this is where Everything changes because most men don't realize that a woman feels far more from what a man doesn't react to than from what he does. The moment she senses that your emotions are tied to her behavior, your mood shifts when she texts. Your confidence rises or falls depending on her attention. You stop being a mystery and start being predictable. And predictable is the opposite of magnetic. But the man she becomes obsessed with, he doesn't rush toward her energy and he doesn't run away from it. He meets it with the same internal rhythm he always had. If she comes closer, he doesn't panic with excitement. If she pulls away, he doesn't panic with fear. His emotional pace remains grounded, steady, calm. And what that does psychologically is it forces her to lean in, not because he's withholding, not because he's distant, but because he feels emotionally sovereign. A sovereign man is a rare experience. He does not need her attention to feel valuable. He does not need her affection to feel worthy. He does not need her approval to feel grounded. And when a woman encounters a man like this, it triggers something deep and instinctual in her. The desire to earn him, not through performance, not through pretending, but through genuine connection. This is why women become obsessed with men who seem different. It's not that he's mysterious. It's not that he's playing hard to get. It's that he's living at a frequency that isn't powered by external validation. His confidence is quiet, not loud. His presence is heavy, not harsh. His attention is selective, not desperate. And his energy is stable, not chaotic. Women crave emotional stability more than perfection. A man who can remain steady in conversation, steady in disagreement, steady in silence, steady when she's emotional, steady when she's uncertain. This man becomes unforgettable, not because he's unattainable, but because he's unshakable. And here's the part men don't realize. When a woman senses that you won't lose yourself over her, she starts giving you parts of herself she doesn't give to anyone else. Vulnerability, curiosity, investment, effort. Because obsession isn't about intensity. It's about safety mixed with fascination. She feels safe with your stability. She feels fascinated by your independence. And when safety and fascination collide, her mind starts looping. She wonders why you don't get flustered. She wonders why you're not over-exited. She wonders why you're not intimidated, threatened, reactive, or overly accommodating. She wonders why your inner world doesn't bend for her. And that wondering turns into thinking. That thinking turns into longing. And that longing turns into obsession. The man who triggers this is not a performer. He's not a people pleaser. He's not a strategist. He's a man who has mastered the pace of his own emotional world. And once a woman feels that, truly feels it, she will chase it, even if she doesn't fully understand why. Women don't get obsessed with men who constantly talk about themselves or try to impress. They get obsessed with men who listen deeply, who absorb without judgment, who reflect without overanalyzing, and who respond without being overbearing. And this is one of the most misunderstood truths about female psychology. Obsession is triggered not by loud actions, but by subtle, consistent emotional resonance. It's the man who understands that her stories, her frustrations, her excitement, her doubts are not problems to be fixed. They are windows into her mind. When a man listens in this way, he creates a rare kind of intimacy that most women never experience. Most men listen selectively. Most men respond reactively. Most men are either trying to find a solution, validate themselves, or prove their intelligence. But the man who becomes unforgettable does none of these things. He listens to understand, not to reply. He absorbs without overreacting. He reflects without judgment. And the effect is quiet but profound. She starts to feel seen, really seen in a way that bypasses superficial attraction and touches her core. This deep listening triggers a powerful psychological loop. She notices how present he is, how calm he remains, how unaffected he is by her highs and lows, and her mind starts replaying those moments, comparing them to other men and realizing something quietly uncomfortable. I've never met someone who makes me feel this way. That realization isn't just fleeting. It accumulates, it grows, it transforms into curiosity, attachment, and eventually obsession. The irony is that this kind of obsession doesn't require a man to do anything flashy. No expensive gifts, no grand gestures, no dramatic displays. The magic lies in how he holds space for her without losing himself. He listens, he observes. He reacts with thoughtfulness, and he keeps his own emotional world intact. That combination is rare, and rare is magnetic. Women also unconsciously detect self-mastery. Listening deeply requires discipline. The discipline to resist interrupting, to resist giving unsolicited advice, to resist letting emotions dictate reactions. Most men fail here. Most men let impatience, ego, or insecurity slip through. But the man who has self-mastery is like a gravitational pull she can't ignore. She begins to attach value to his presence, not because he's perfect, but because he exists as someone she can trust with her mind and emotions without fear of chaos. And here's the final piece. The man who listens deeply and remains grounded is emotionally unpredictable in the right way. She never knows what insight he might offer, what observation might strike her, what calm response might shift her own thinking. He creates an internal tension that keeps her invested, keeps her thinking, keeps her coming back. And this isn't manipulation, it's alignment. He doesn't chase her attention. He doesn't demand her approval. He simply exists in a way that triggers her curiosity and emotional engagement over and over again. When a woman encounters a man like this, obsession doesn't come instantly. It comes quietly, like gravity slowly pulling her into orbit. She finds herself thinking about him in unexpected moments. She finds herself longing for conversations that aren't dramatic or intense, but simply meaningful. She finds herself attached to the rhythm of his presence, and that is the one thing that makes her obsession inevitable. He is consistent, grounded, emotionally sovereign, and fully himself while making her feel truly seen. The reason women get obsessed with certain men is not because of charm, looks, or status. It's because of the way he makes her feel in his presence without needing her to perform, prove, or please. And here's the truth most men never hear. Obsession is born from a combination of emotional grounding, self-mastery, and the rare ability to hold space for a woman without losing oneself. It's not about giving her everything she wants. It's about giving her something she didn't even know she was craving: stability, authenticity, and a man who refuses to bend for her attention. Think about the women in your life, the ones who captivated your attention, lingered in your thoughts, or made you wonder if she was the one. Chances are, she didn't obsess over you because you texted her first or because you remembered every small detail about her life. She became obsessed because you existed as a constant force, a man who was alive, aware, and unwavering. Every interaction she had with you reinforced that you were different. Different from the men who bend, adjust, or collapse under the slightest emotional pressure. And that difference is magnetic. This is where most men misunderstand attraction. They think women are drawn to games, manipulation, or high drama. But in reality, women are wired to respond to polarity, the push and pull between independence and connection, confidence and vulnerability, certainty and curiosity. The man who triggers obsession holds that polarity naturally. He is not cold, but he is unmoved by emotional manipulation. He is not distant, but he is never desperate for approval. He is not rigid, but he is rooted in himself. That balance is intoxicating, and it's exactly what turns interest into fixation. Obsession grows quietly, internally, and cumulatively. She starts replaying your conversations. She notices how steady you remain when others would falter. She notices how you listen without reacting, how you speak without performing. She notices that she can't predict your next move because you aren't performing for her or anyone else. And her subconscious mind, which is more powerful than any conscious choice, begins looping these observations, turning them into a mental fixation. Here's the secret no one tells men. You don't create obsession by chasing. It emerges when you choose yourself first consistently every day. When you master your emotions, remain grounded, stay consistent, and treat her as a person rather than a prize. Obsession happens naturally. It's the invisible force she cannot resist because it's rooted in authenticity, stability, and alignment. And the more rare and natural you make this, the deeper her fascination grows. So now I want you to think about yourself honestly. Ask yourself, am I living in a way that commands attention through my own stability, or am I bending to get hers? Think carefully. Write your answer in the comments because this is the kind of reflection that changes not just your relationships, but your life. If this video opened your eyes, smash that like button. Subscribe for more insights about female psychology and relationship dynamics. Share this with a friend who needs to hear this because the truth about attraction and obsession isn't common knowledge, and every man deserves to understand